Writing a book and selling a book require different sets of skills. And it really doesn't have anything to do with pitching your ideas or manipulating people or coercing people. It really has to do more with communicating very, very clearly. If you are an author and you have books out there, this is going to be a great video for you. My name is Donald Miller. I wrote a book called Building a StoryBrand and about 13 or 14 other books. And they've done pretty well. And they've done pretty well because over time I have learned how to sell books. And it really doesn't have anything to do with pitching your ideas or manipulating people or coercing people. It really has to do more with communicating very, very clearly about what the offer is inside of that book. I remember I got on an airplane once out of Portland, Oregon to speak at a conference in Indianapolis, Indiana. And you won't believe it, I got on the airplane and sitting next to me was a person reading my latest book. I lived in Portland. I flew out of a Portland airport 1,000 times. I'd never seen my book out there in the wild. I was really pretty excited. And my picture is on the back cover of the book. I sat down and I said, "Hey man, what do you think of that book?" And I had a big smile on my face, and I thought he'd go, "Oh my word, I cannot believe it." But he didn't. What he did was he said, "This is my favorite book. I've read it 3 times and I love this book. In fact, I'm going to Indianapolis to hear this man speak tonight." And I thought that's really hilarious. I'm going to Indianapolis too. I figured he'd get it in a second, but he didn't. And after about 5 minutes, I didn't know how to explain. I actually am Donald Miller. I'm the guy who wrote that book. So we just had a conversation. And quite honestly, I enjoyed having a conversation about my book and my brand without him knowing who I was, because I got to be a fly on the wall listening to a stranger and a fan talk about my book. What I discovered really quickly was he couldn't explain why he liked the book. He couldn't explain what the book was about. He just had an experience about the book, and I realized pretty quickly, this is costing me sales. In other words, I'm really good at writing the 200 or 300 pages inside the book. I'm terrible at writing the paragraph or even the sentence on the back of the book that makes somebody want to read it. So let me repeat that. I'm great at writing the book. I'm terrible at writing the sentence or paragraph on the back of the book that makes somebody want to read it. I think these are 2 very different skill sets. One is sort of explaining something, and the other is summarizing something so that somebody can get it really, really quick. Writing a book and selling a book require different sets of skills. So let's talk about mistakes authors and publishers make when selling a nonfiction book. These are different rules for fiction and nonfiction, but if you're a nonfiction author or if you're a publisher who sells a lot of nonfiction books, this is really important. 1, the title does not clearly communicate an offer. I see this all the time, I mean, I would say 8 out of 10 books, the title of the book is so elusive, it doesn't actually communicate the offer. Now, there's a lot of books out there that's true, and those books have sold well. I've written some of them. Blue Like Jazz sold over 1 million copies, but the subtitle is Non-Religious Thoughts on Christian Spirituality. So non-religious thoughts means I'm not this huddy, fuddy guy quoting scripture all the time. I'm just a normal dude. I'm not a pastor. And I'm writing in a very blue-collar way. There's still a lot there that you could say was kind of pretty clear. But Blue Like Jazz is not a clear offer. That's an anomaly. Most books like that don't actually sell well at all unless you're in the fiction realm. Nonfiction books need an offer. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, How to Lose 30 Pounds in 90 Days, those sorts of things. Those big books tend to do really well. So you've got to make sure the title, 1, it clearly communicates the offer, but more importantly, does not confuse people. The answer to confusion is always no. And I'm going to show you some examples later of books that fail at this. But you want the title to clearly communicate some sort of offer. The sales copy fails to identify the problem the book will solve for the reader. Okay, I've said this 1 million times to friends who are writing books. They'll come to me and they say, "Don, I'm writing a book," and they'll give me the name of the book, and the book has to do, or the title has to do with some story inside the book from their childhood. And it's like, no, you can explain that in the book, and maybe it's a chapter title. That can't be the title of the book. And it can't be inside language, an inside joke, those sorts of things. Because if somebody walks along in a bookstore or is browsing on Amazon, they're not going to understand what that offer is. So the title is not a place to get creative and cute most of the time. Also, the thing I say to these authors, young authors, is if you want your book to succeed, it needs to be the known book that solves a specific problem. So if you've got a book about leadership, this is the book that you hand to a first-time leader. 1 Minute Manager, right? That's it. 1 Minute Manager is the book that you hand to somebody who's learning how to manage. If you're trying to be productive, 7 Habits of Highly Productive People. I'm not very productive. I don't have my life organized, those sorts of things. Well, here's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You can see that if I can't answer the question, what problem does this book solve? If somebody has this problem, I hand them this book, you're going to have a hard time selling that book. So identify that problem and make sure the title and subtitle speak to it. They do not prepare repeatable sound bites to use in marketing, publicity, social media, and keynotes. You need a soundbite messaging campaign, short, simple, memorable sound bites that you repeat. For example, if you know anybody who's a first-time leader or a first-time manager, make sure to hand them my book. That's a soundbite. And everybody goes, oh yeah, my daughter just got a job managing a Lululemon, or whatever it is, and they're going to go get that book and they're going to hand it to them. That soundbite repeated over and over, not only from you at cocktail parties and at book readings, but on your Amazon page and on the back cover of the book and in your social media. Anywhere you can put it, you want to tell people, if somebody's struggling with this, make sure to hand them this book. That book back there, Building a StoryBrand 2.0, Clarify Your Message So Customers Will Listen, is the book that people hand to anybody who's struggling to talk about their brand. And because of that book has sold 1.4 million copies. It became known as the solution to a problem. They do not offer a buying incentive. Now, this is a big deal. If you're releasing a book, don't just release the book. Like if you buy Building a StoryBrand 2.0, you get an AI tool that writes some of your sound bites for you. I direct you to a page that does that, and it's an incentive to buy the book and to go deeper with the book. Add something else to the book instead of just the book itself. They do not use the book to collect leads. Now, if you're building a brand, if you're an author and you're building your personal brand, make sure you have some sort of free resource in the book that you can collect email addresses. That way, if you go to Topeka, Kansas to do a book reading, you can email people in Topeka, Kansas and tell them you're doing the book reading. It's really important for that second, third, fourth book that you write to do well, to start developing a fan base and collect those leads. Human beings are primarily interested in survival. They spend money, cast votes, and take action toward one thing: survival assets. Why do I bring this up? Your book has to be a survival asset. The title of the book, the subtitle, and those 5 sound bites that you use, and I'll get to those 5 sound bites in a minute, have to actually position your book as a survival asset. Human beings are designed to stay on the planet. Our minds are constantly trying to figure out how to survive and thrive. That's why we look both ways before we cross the street. We're in every conversation, we're listening for survival assets. And those can be very complicated. Friendships, relationships are survival asset. Money is a survival asset. Great night's sleep is a survival asset. Looking better, having some sort of skincare regime is a survival asset. Wearing nice clothes might be a survival asset. Whatever you perceive as something that's going to get you ahead or thrive in life is a survival asset. I would argue that nearly every dollar you have ever spent in your life, you spent to survive. It had some sort of survival association. It was rest, joy, vacation. It was increased productivity. It was self-defense, security. It was a wonderful place to come home to, so great interior design. It was, whatever it was, there's some sort of survival connection. Made my life easier, made my life better. There's some sort of survival connection to almost every single dollar you have ever spent. So if people only buy survival assets, you've got to position your book as a survival asset. All right, here's how not to sell a book. And I feel for this author, I'm sure this is a really great book, but let's just talk about titles, subtitles, stuff like that. I just found this book on Amazon. I'm not familiar with Andrew Linty. I'm sure he's a really wonderful person. But let's look. The Intrapreneur's Playbook. The title, a made-up word that does not explain the offer in such a way that it piques curiosity. The Intrapreneur's Playbook. I'm sure inside the book he explains the difference between an intrapreneur, a made-up word, and an entrepreneur. But if you have to explain it, why are you putting it on the cover of the book, right? If I say, yeah, I'm the author of the Intrapreneur's Playbook, people just go, oh, that's interesting. And if there's a high cognitive load, meaning that the statement is heavy, and what I mean by that is I've got to think a little bit about what it means, your sales go down. And look at the subtitle, it doesn't help. 13 proven ways to navigate is a complicated word, Corporate resistance. What is corporate resistance? I don't know what corporate resistance is. And drive change from within. Okay, that gets me what? Like corporate resistance is what? And drive change from within toward what? Toward me getting a promotion, toward better salaries, toward the growth of a company. You know, I can think of 50 different subtitles that would communicate a similar idea more clearly and less cognitive load. I would say I like to measure words when I read them. The Entrepreneur's Playbook as a title, the cognitive load on that is like 50. 0 to 100, it's like 50. And then Navigate Corporate Resistance, 25. Drive Change from Within, 15, 25. We're up near a 0 to 100 cognitive load. Your book title and subtitle need to be 0 cognitive load. 0, not 50 or 100, 0. In other words, don't make people think on the cover. Make them think inside the book, and even then, you don't even want to make them think inside the book. You want to think for them. You want to present the ideas so clearly they don't have to think in order to understand you and consider your ideas. There's also a bonus that is really hard to translate into a survival benefit. Bonus, ChatGPT-powered prompts included to supercharge every chapter. Supercharge every chapter. What if it was ChatGPT-powered prompts included to give you tips on how to get a promotion or to move up in your career? Supercharge every chapter is really about you, not about me. And of course, the Amazon ranking and sales, I would imagine, that speak to the elusiveness of the offer. This book is ranked 1,674,581, which means it's probably selling about 1 copy a month. By the way, Andrew could take this book and retitle and subtitle it and give a more clear bonus, and sales would probably go up by 900%. You'd sell 9 a month, right? And I think everybody would agree with me. Just make it more clear. Even the pictures of the cover with one light bulb going on, going up, other light bulbs going down, and the little playbook, X's and O's, those are very complicated visuals to understand what in the world you're talking about. You're making me work very hard to understand how this is a survival asset for me. I imagine you're helping me move up in a company, be more innovative, help that company make more money. There's way better ways to say that on the cover of the book. All right, a book has the best chance of succeeding if it helps the reader accomplish something specific, helps me make more money, get a promotion, find tax loopholes that save me money, whatever they are, solves a problem. Like I said before, you want your book to be the book that people go to solve a problem, and or offers an aspirational identity. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is an aspirational identity, and the previous page, we didn't see any of that on that book title. Let me give you an example of a guy who does it decently well, not to toot my own horn here, but Building a StoryBrand sold well over 1 million copies. And if you look at the way I talk about it, cut through relentless marketing noise with the power of story, over 1 million copies sold and business transformed. Stand out, differentiation would be cutting through the noise. Clarify your message, help customers understand exactly how you transform their lives. If you think about it, that translates directly into money. Cut through the noise, make your message stand out in a world of 10,000 daily brand messages. How can I differentiate from the competition and get noticed when everybody's being ignored? And impact more people, leverage the most powerful tool for capturing attention, that is story. All of that is really pretty clear, and I would say my title, Building a StoryBrand, is an aspirational identity for your company. Even then, I wouldn't give that a low cognitive load. I would say it's a cognitive load of 20, but I overcame it with clarify your message so customers will listen. That directly translates into money in your hand. Here's another book that I really like, and these guys are really, really smart. Benjamin Hardy and Blake Erickson wrote a book called The Science of Scaling. It's a very easy to communicate offer. The subtitle is Grow Your Business Bigger and Faster Than You Think Possible. Well, that's a survival asset right there. And they're going to get into the science of actually scaling. But look at some of the Amazon collateral. Breakthrough or burnout. All right, breakthrough or burnout. People like contrast. They like stakes. They like black and white stakes. You're either going to go bankrupt or you're going to be a billionaire. People like those kinds of stakes. So breakthrough or burnout. The scaling decisions that make or break you. leads me to believe that there's some decisions I need to make. And then also, and they're going to define those decisions and tell me what to do. The Science of Scaling, there's a little checklist and X list comparing this book to other strategies. You get proven and documented in theirs, lacks long-term repeatability in the others. It's really good to have a very low cognitive load example of what you're getting in the book. Now here's a book, I want to show you another book that does well. It's a very good book by Claire Hughes Johnson called Scaling People. This book should not be selling well. It just shouldn't. It's a textbook, it's 500 pages. There's two reasons I think this book is selling well. One is it's a really good book. Claire wrote a really good book, but it also, the survival aspects of it, tactics for managing and company building are relatively high. And then if you look at the Amazon copy, it explains what is essentially a textbook. It explains how to empower people and grow your company. I would have said this is going to be a very, very hard book to sell, but she's like ranked 25,000th on Amazon, and people are really buzzing about this book. They really like it because they're trying to figure out how to empower their people, and they want a textbook way of doing it. Also, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Good to Great, Built to Last. You know, you look at these books on the bottom, for sure have almost zero cognitive load. But I would say Scaling People, Tactics for Management and Company Building. Company building would be the zero cognitive load parts of it. Tactics for management. Any manager who wants to be a really great leader and rise to CEO is probably going to pick up Scaling People, and indeed they have. So some books that do really well. All right, when you promote your book, you want to do this with a 3-phase messaging campaign. And those 3 phases are curiosity, enlightenment, and commitment. Curiosity are curiosity sound bites that make you want to buy the book. They're designed to get attention, to bring attention to the book, and in a zero cognitive load fashion, get me to want to be more enlightened about the book. Now, when I'm being enlightened about the book, I'm reading the Amazon page, I'm reading the back cover copy, I might be looking at a sample first chapter, whatever it is, and then and only then will I actually commit and buy this book. A good messaging campaign works like a house. You've got 5 front steps that get me up to the front porch. That's your curiosity phase of the campaign. The front porch is where you're enlightening me. YouTube videos, PDFs, lead generators, assessments, all sorts of stuff you can do to enlighten people about the content of the book. And then the front door is where I go inside and buy the book and read the book. I would say most first-time authors, and even a lot of authors who've written 4 or 5 books, their campaign looks like this. There's no curiosity sound bites. There's nothing on the front porch, and the front door is boarded up, right? This is not how you promote a book. Let's look at an example of a book called The Principle-Driven Leader. This is a book that I've worked behind the scenes on for Charles and Chase Koch. Charles Koch is the father of Koch Industries. It is a multi-$100 billion organization, Georgia Pacific. They own a bunch of companies. Somewhat controversial sometimes, but I've gotten to know the Koch Industries family and leadership family. I've been to their nonprofit organization's annual summit. They're giving away over $1 billion. I've had their criminal justice reform about the unfairness of our prison system. I've had their people to my house to talk about messaging. We've talked about adoption services, foster kid services, addiction recovery services that they are funding to the tune of over $1 billion a year. They're also great at just empowering bottom-up leadership inside their companies. It is not a top-down authoritarian regime. It's very, very different. So I know there's going to be some comments and negative pushback. My guess is those are gut reactions that are largely uneducated. Anyway, they built their company with principles. And I actually read another book by the Koch family. They mentioned the principles of human progress. And I actually got an appointment with Brian Hooks, the co-author, for 15 minutes in his office in Washington, D.C. and said, what are the principles of human progress? I'm trying to grow a company. You talk about the principles, but you don't say what they are. He said, well, Don, there's millions of them. I mean, it's just wisdom. I said, well, I'd like to know, the top 10 or something, and would you write a book about it? And at the time, they said, we're not writing another book. That was really hard to do. A couple of years later, I get a call. Apparently, they're writing a book about the principles of human progress. So I actually helped instruct them on messaging on the book and came up with this idea of the title, The Principle-Driven Leader. It's actually changed now to Becoming a Principle-Driven Leader based on Charles's feedback. But let's look at the sound bites that it would take to sell this book. And this is an example for you of the 5 sound bites that you need. The path to building an enduring business seems difficult and elusive. All right, we sort of want to run with the idea of building an enduring business. Every book needs to own a problem. And the problem this book is going to own is, how do you build an enduring business? I don't know how to build an enduring business, a business that outlasts me and lasts for generations and makes hundreds of billions of dollars into the economy and employs, their companies employ over 120,000 people. So path to building an enduring business is the whole that they're going to own. The empathy statement is, we know that it's hard to build a business that lasts. You need a problem statement, and then you need to empathize with the person who has this problem. We know that it's hard to build a business that lasts. Don't overthink this. It's just, hey, I feel your pain. Remember Bill Clinton? I feel your pain. You know, you want to empathize with the customer. The answer, the principle-driven leader reveals 41 principles it takes to build an enduring business. And again, the book title is probably going to be Becoming a Principle-Driven Leader. It's not out yet. We're still working on the book. But bottom line, the answer, the book is the answer to the problem. I don't know how to build an enduring business. The answer is there's 41 principles. A lot of people would say, Don, that's too many principles. Really? Robert Greene wrote a book called The 48 Laws of Power that sold millions and millions of copies, and he's got 7 more than this. So no, that's not too many principles. Change, transforming you into a principle-driven leader. You want to offer an aspirational identity with your book. Who is your reader going to become if they actually read this book? Well, if you read this book, you'll become a principle-driven leader, and the title of the book is Becoming a Principle-Driven Leader. So right there on the cover of the book is the aspirational identity, Becoming a Principle-Driven Leader, and then the subtitle is The 41 Principles That Build an Enduring Business, and it's all right there, a zero cognitive load offer. The end result, you and your business can endure anything, is the end result if you read the book. Now, these are 5 sound bites. They are pretty close to the sound bites that we're probably going to use, but we're still shaping those. And you need these 5 sound bites. Every publisher needs these 5 sound bites: problem, empathy, answer, change, end result. Go to StoryBrand.com if you want to find out why these 5 sound bites are what they are and the rules for creating them. But these are the sound bites that you need for every single book that you release. You also need these sound bites for your company in order to recruit top talent and new authors. So you need these 5 sound bites for just about everything you do. But this is the front steps, right? Let's go to the front porch and talk about what sort of incentives we could offer to sell this book. Now, we're still working on the campaign, but I just kind of went fictional in terms of saying what we could do. You could actually have a lead generator called How to Build an Enduring Business. So if people aren't willing to read a whole book, maybe they'll read a couple pages, or there's a checklist or something like that. We capture their email address and we start emailing them about the book, enlightening them about the book. Social media campaigns, 41 principles in action. You could actually take the 41 principles and talk about how Jeff Bezos used one of them, and how, you know, whoever used another one. And you know, associate the 41 principles with 41 different success stories and sort of tell the stories of these founders and these CEOs who use these principles to grow their business. And then, of course, say in every one of them, if you want to use one of the principles, go get Becoming a Principle-Driven Leader. Educational content, 41 principles in 41 weeks. Let's say you sign up and you get a video and every week for 41 weeks that elaborates on the principles themselves. In fact, this is what the team is working on. They're going to have the leadership at Koch Industries and even middle management and some people on the assembly lines share how they employ the principles in video form, and you get access to that video resource library when you buy the book. So really fantastic enlightenment stuff. That would be more of a commitment campaign. But let's talk about incentives to actually get people to buy the book. A free on-demand course with purchase. They are working on this. I just talked about it. 41 leaders talking about the 41 principles. You'd get that free when you buy the book. A free AI tool. Chase Koch is really excited about a free AI tool so that if you run a business, you can actually type in whatever problem you're dealing with, and the AI tool would research and look into the 41 principles and tell you what to do based on the principles, based on the problem that you're trying to resolve, as a free bonus for the book. Eligibility for a summit with bulk purchase. This would be something that we want to run. You'd be eligible to the Principle-Driven Leader Summit when you order 1,000 books or more. So only 100 leaders can come to the summit. You apply, you talk about what you're going to do with your 1,000 books. Are you going to hand it to your entire leadership team if you've got a big corporation? And you would be eligible for that. And they could run that play every year. And that's 100,000 books being put into the marketplace every year by running that same summit. And by the way, 100,000 books can cost you about $20,000. It's a lot of money, except $20,000 transforms your entire culture. And then you go to the summit to learn how to employ those books and use those books to build an enduring business. The previous title they were considering was the Principal Advantage. I think the Principal Advantage is a very high cognitive load. So let's talk about mistitling a book. And they were very receptive to this. The word advantage is an advantage. It is a survival asset, but it's an advantage to what? Like, we don't have the word enduring business in here, so there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance. Has a relatively high cognitive load, this previous title of the book does not speak clearly to something people want other than a general advantage, does not clearly address a problem people want to solve. If you saw a book called The Principal Advantage, what problem do you think that book would solve? Now, you've heard me talk about the book, but pretend you haven't. You just saw it on Amazon. You probably wouldn't know what problem that solves. And we'll have trouble piquing curiosity and earning more attention. The job of the title of the book is not to explain what the book is about. The job of the title of the book is to pique your curiosity, get your attention, so that you turn the book over, and that explains a little bit more of what's in the book. And then the introduction exposes that further, and then of course you're deep into the book by that point. But a lot of people are trying to say what's in the book or the feel of what's in the book, and they just end up with a high cognitive load message. All right, Becoming a Principle-Driven Leader. By the way, that's the title that Charles Koch came up with. I came up with the Principle-Driven Leader, and Charles Koch came back and said, well, we really want the rank and file to read this book. And also, it's a very, very vulnerable book about all the mistakes they made building Koch Industries. So Becoming a Principle-Driven Leader is a much better title. So 41 Principles to Build an Enduring Business by Charles and Chase Koch. Really good title. Let's look at this title. The title has a relatively low cognitive load, offers something for which the Koch family is perceived as the world's experts, wisdom toward building an enduring business, will own mental real estate among leaders of all types, identifies an aspirational identity for the reader, making it a strong emotional offer, and will pique curiosity and therefore earn or justify more attention. All of these things are true, and they need to be true of your book title. Some of you are watching this and you're saying, I screwed up. I put the wrong title in the book. You might have, but can you change the subtitle? Can you come up with a lead generator that has the right title and then tell people about your book? Or can you go back to the publisher and say, is it possible for us to change the title of this book? Hopefully I'm catching you before that happens, but the world's not over. You can still sell a lot of books. The human mind is drawn to contrast and stakes, right? It's drawn toward, I'm either going to build an enduring business or my business is going to die with me. Back cover copy proposed for this book. Great organizations aren't built on tactics, they're built on principles. Little paradigm shift in there. People like paradigm shifts. You used to think it was this, but it's actually this. Organizations that rely on personalities or short-term wins eventually fail. Organizations built on enduring principles endure. You hear the contrast in there? Fail versus endure. In Becoming a Principle-Driven Leader, Charles Koch and Chase Koch share the 41 principles that have guided Koch Industries in becoming one of the most resilient private enterprises in the world. These principles form a practical leadership system that helps leaders build organizations with strong cultures, sound judgment, and long-term performance. If you lead a company, a team, a school, a nonprofit, a startup, or a family business, you need this book, because the future belongs to leaders who build on principles, not personalities. Do you smell the offer in there? Do you smell the survival assets in every single sentence? Become a principle-driven leader. Build an organization that lasts. All right, if you like this kind of wisdom about sound bites and messaging and how to think the way your customer thinks, I actually send out a weekly soundbite example video, and you can get that at weeklysoundbite.com. If you go to weeklysoundbite.com, or if you're watching this on a computer or a television screen, just pull out your phone and scan that QR code. I will send you a weekly video that will transform you into a soundbite specialist. You will become an expert communicator. If you're an author, sign up for this because it's real. I'm really going to help you write more succinct sentences that deliver every time somebody reads them. And I'm going to teach you to create an offer, an irresistible offer for your book title, that work, that sell a lot of books. If you're just a business owner out there, you need the same thing. I talk about all sorts of things in these weekly soundbite videos, you know, internal change campaigns, how to sell plungers, how to sell knife sharpeners, how to sell lawn equipment, how to recruit people for your college sports team, you know, all sorts of fun stuff. If you want to be a soundbite specialist and learn how to communicate, it's free. Just go to weeklysoundbite.com and sign up, and I'll send you a weekly video.